So not only are two of the most iconic and popular clones of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, back, but they are under new identities and even getting ready to go to war with each other. Now as always, this is AJ at the Hero Informer, and let's get into it. So if you haven't picked up a Spider-Man comic in a while or know any of the lore, Ben Reilly and Kaine Parker are two clones of Spider-Man, but now they go by two entirely different personas, with Ben Reilly now being known as Chasm and Kaine being known as the Scarlet Spider. Now Kaine is more brutal, more deadly, if you will, Spider-Man, not afraid to get his hands dirty and even murder, but of course he's trying to turn over a new leaf, so to speak. Where on the other hand, Ben Reilly has kind of lost his way. You see, he is no longer a hero in the traditional sense, because not only has he lost part of his memories, his mind, his sanity, but he is more inclined to do villainous things, which also coincides with his new look and costume, even granting him special powers such as a spider sense that can be used on the offensive, and also special energy webbing that can be made into constructs. All really cool and interesting stuff, depending on who you ask, of course. But where the story does pick up and start off, we see a group of kids in Queens going down to a supposed underground rave in an unknown area. And you would think Marvel's New York City is the last place you would want to be, going somewhere you don't know, especially with all the heroes, villains, superpowered freaks, and everything mutants going around. But of course, these teens go ahead anyway. And as they are down there trying to find what they're looking for, suddenly they hear something and turn around and see a giant beast. And this particular creature is known as Freak, who is a D-list Spider-Man villain, whose backstory is basically he was a drug addict who accidentally broke into Dr. Connor's labs and injected himself with a bunch of animal stem fluids, which he thought was crystal meth. But he is crazy and vulnerable and can regenerate, along with being hideous and pretty strong. And so with it looking not good for these kids, as no way can these random teenagers take on a creature like this, who has battled Spider-Man, they start to scream and scram for their lives. But it seems like their would-be doomed lives are saved as two people emerge down the stairway. And as these two silhouettes come in to save the day, one looks awfully a lot like Spider-Man, with even one of the kids going on to say, "Oh my gosh, it's you, Spider." But before he's able to even finish his sentence, everything gets revealed. Because no, this isn't your traditional Peter Parker Spider-Man, this is Chasm, the clone of Peter Parker Ben Reilly, along with his girlfriend, Hallows Eve. And so with these two heroes arriving on the scene, an all-out battle starts to break loose and start, with Hallows Eve going on to use her ability, which she can put on different types of masks to turn her into whatever the mask is and giving her the powers. And in this case, she puts on a mask of Frankenstein, giving her improved strength, durability, and all that jazz. And while she rushes in and starts to distract everyone, Chasm starts to do something, well, definitely villainous and not as heroic, as he goes to one of the downed kids, demanding that he gives over whatever cash and or credit cards he has, basically charging them to save their lives. And eventually, with all the chaos going on, the kid does accept and give in, giving him whatever he has, and only then does Ben Reilly jump into the battle to defeat many of these vermin. And no, it doesn't seem like Chasm and Hallows Eve were just patrolling around New York and happened to stumble in here. It seems like this was a premeditated thing. As Ben Reilly goes on to say, "Told ya, these kids were loaded." But while he's in the middle of continuing to fight these things, something interesting happens. As his spider sense starts to go off, as we see a silhouette of someone pry his hands over his head and literally tear it back, digging into his mind and doing something very peculiar, which will be revealed later on. But for now, Ben Reilly, seemingly unsure of what even just happened, gets right back into the battle, killing and snapping one of the vermin's neck. Moving over though inside of the same sewer system and not too far from where their battle was going on, we then pick up with another Spider-Man clone. But this time, instead of it being Ben Reilly, it is the Scarlet Spider known as Kaine Parker. As of right now, he's on a mission to track down Chasm, or Ben Reilly, for questioning and whatever other motives he has. But while he is on his way there, he then starts to think of their shared history, going on to say that while they are not real brothers and just clones of Peter Parker, they still have their similarities, but also their differences, as finding out they were clones made Kaine a killer, where Ben Reilly thought it made him a hero. And eventually life took Ben down darker roads, as Ben Reilly right now isn't all there in his mind. His head is pretty messed up and he is missing core memories and parts that make him what he is, due to meddling from the Beyond Corporation and being mixed up with mutant drama and magic. He then goes on to say that his life keeps getting better while Ben Reilly's just keeps getting worse, but he still goes on to try to follow him, and as he is searching through the sewers, he is blindsided from behind by a bunch of rushing vermin. Because Kaine right here, he is one of the few Spider-Man that absolutely has no spider sense. You know, one of Spider-Man's most powerful and useful abilities he doesn't have. But he has a bunch of other cool abilities that might make up for it, or at least substitute. But as he recovers from the ambush, he then decides to go see what was making them so spooked, causing them to run away. And as he follows the trail, he finds something foul, the brutally maimed bodies of the Freak and other vermin, the ones that Ben Reilly murdered earlier. But it seems Kaine, this Scarlet Spider, also ran into the Freak before, as he goes on to say that the Freak, this creature, was strong. He left him bruised for a week, meaning Ben Reilly right now is stronger than he would usually have to be to leave the Freak mutilated like this. But while he is also here, he also sees the other children and kids webbed up to the ceiling by Ben Reilly. And as they are screaming and yelling for help, the police arrive. And instead of trying to stop and explain himself, which this entire scene looks pretty clear-cut and unexplainable, as the cops do have their weapons drawn, the Scarlet Spider then goes invisible, seeking an escape route instead. As because his suit that he has here isn't just a normal cloth suit, no, it's a specialized stealth suit that allows him to go invisible at will. Moving over to the duo, Chasm and Hallows Eve, we pick up as we see them at their hideout in a church bell tower as they go on to talk about their victory and spoils of war, if you will. But they also go on to talk about how different Ben has been acting, because you see, Ben has came to an epiphany. He has given up his pursuit of trying to get his memories back from Peter Parker and now is trying to accept who he is as his new version of Ben Reilly in his broken, twisted version of Chasm. But everything isn't as it seems, as Hallows Eve even remembers and goes on to mention how he was back at the subway tunnel, how he seemed to disappear for a second like he wasn't even in control of his own body, which of course this plot point just sets up another bad thing and situation that the Spider-Men in this series are going to have to deal with. Deep underground though, we finally see the main villain and the culprit behind everything so far, as this mysterious guy goes on to taunt and even beat on Mole Man, a C-list Fantastic Four villain, which isn't very important right now. Just know that this villain here is using his hideout resources and lair, because we find out this person is none other than Druig, an Eternal. Yes, you heard me right, an Eternal. The same species, if you will, that Thanos is, which is an odd choice for a Spider-Man villain and for a Spider-Man story, but of course we'll see how this all plays out. And the reason why he is here with Mole Man of all people is because he has recently experienced a humbling period, with Thanos himself coming and beating him up, reducing him to this low point that he is at now. And as he is trying to rebuild, he is trying to find every available resource that he can. And of course, with his main powers being in telepathy, he searched out for an easy, accessible mind to get his hands on. And of course, we saw it was Chasm, Ben Reilly, with his fractured and already twisted mind, making him an easy and susceptible target. Kaine, the Scarlet Spider, on the other hand, is busy still at the crime scene, placing spider trackers at the battle scene and bodies from earlier, using of course his invisibility and stealth suit tech. He is rightfully so playing the long game, as in the end he only wants to get to Ben Reilly and try to stop whatever this is going on. So for now, he swings home to his apartment to wait until his spider trackers go off so he can finally track down and meet Ben face to face. Speaking of Ben Reilly though, we see him in bed, but just then he is awakened out of nowhere with the same glowing red eyes and control from earlier, which of course we can only assume is the Eternal Druig's doing, as he goes on to manually take control of Ben Reilly to further whatever goals he has in mind. As Ben Reilly goes on to suit up, changing into his Chasm persona and swinging off into the unknown. But that unknown doesn't stay unknown for too long, as we see him arrive at the morgue. The morgue where the bodies of his victims, the creatures he have killed and brutally maimed, rest. And as he arrives, we see a mysterious voice speak to him in his head, telling him that it is a shame to let broken toys go to waste, don't you agree? Unfortunately, I don't detect any anatomical experience in that pockmarked brain of yours. No bother though, I'll walk you through the first steps and I'll let you improvise the rest. As he goes on to reach out to one of the bodies, seemingly using his abilities to do something to it, mutilate the corpses even further. And as he is done doing whatever he was forced to do, we then see him going back home as he is met with his worried girl, Hallows Eve, as they now know for sure something is up, with Ben Reilly not even knowing what is wrong with him and why does he keep doing and living the way he is. But from one spider to another, we then pick up back with Kaine. As I've mentioned before, he was waiting for this, waiting for his spider trackers to go off so he can finally get on Ben Reilly's trail. But like throughout this entire video, he has been one step behind, as when he gets to the morgue, everything is trashed and the employees are all strung up specifically with Ben Reilly's special webbing. And as he is still examining the crime scene, he then hears what Ben has done, as he turns and see a giant, strung together, mutilated zombie corpse of a creature, something that looks like it's straight out of Elden Ring as some sort of boss. And with this, we see the Scarlet Spider, Kaine, forced to fight and beat this thing solo, alone, with this creature looking like it is not going to go down without a massive fight. But after fighting and leading this creature away from inside and towards outside, Kaine is able to actually defeat and re-kill this thing by slamming an entire ambulance truck into it. Because yes, Kaine isn't like Spider-Man. You see, Spider-Man in this type of situation would try to defeat this thing his best without actually killing it by any means necessary. Kaine, on the other hand, just straight up kill it the first chance he gets. And of course, it doesn't hurt that this behemoth of a creature is already kind of a dead zombie thing strung together. After After heading back inside though, Kaine starts to rethink this entire situation, as it literally changes his perspective on Ben Reilly and just how far he has gone, especially after seeing what he is doing and the people who he is hurting, as he even goes on to say and think, "I'm going to kill Ben when I find him. I can't decide if I mean that literally or not, but I'm going to kill him." And speaking of Ben Reilly, we move over and see him with his partner Hallows Eve, as they try to get to the bottom of what is even happening with him in his broken mindscape. Specifically, we see Hallows Eve use her abilities. She can use the powers and abilities of whatever mask she wears, and with a psychic mask, she tries to enter Ben Reilly's fractured mind. But this is bad for her for a couple reasons, as not only when she enters, she sees just how broken of a person Ben really is, and how his mind is almost too far gone, but she is also very vulnerable to the fact that it is not just Ben Reilly's broken consciousness in there, no. Somebody else's presence is in there too, resulting in foul play. And in there, she is nothing more than a novice compared to the more powerful telepathy of the eternal Druig. And of course, we see Druig not taking kindly to someone messing with his plaything, Ben Reilly, so he then psychically attacks her, causing not only for her to pass out, but for their location of the last revealed, and for them both to be dragged away by Moman's minions. Well, of course, Moman himself is being forced to work with Druig. And now with Ben Reilly's girl being dragged into this, soon it is going to be a full meshing pot. All corners of the story are going to fully collide, from Ben Reilly's Chasm, the Kaine Scarlet Spider, to the Eternal Druig. But for now, we pick up in the actual sewers beneath New York City, where we see Hallows Eve finally back awake, running from Ben Reilly, who seems to be attacking her now, because obviously he is not in control of himself, going on to try to hurt what essentially is to him his Mary Jane. And as they are in the middle of fighting, she is only swiftly able to be saved in the nick of time from her abilities from the mask, as she goes intangible and gets away. And as soon as she's able to escape, suddenly Ben Reilly is back in control, obviously devastated from what is happening and what he almost did, almost hurting someone that he cared about. But of course, he doesn't stay in control for long, as we finally see the Eternal Druig make his full appearance, as he reaches out psychically to alter Ben Reilly's mind once more. And we finally find out why he is doing all of this in the first place, which is not some grand plan or scheme involving Ben Reilly or the Spider-Man. No, it essentially boils down to every few decades, Druig gets bored with all the other Eternal businesses or when the Eternals frustrate him, and so because of this, he goes out into the mortal world to find new playthings to manipulate and play with. And of course now with Chasm, Ben Reilly, being his newest one. And to make things even more interesting for this entire situation, Druig is also aware of Kaine and the part he plays in all of this, with him going on to say, especially now that your quote-unquote brother Kaine is close at hand too. And I wonder, do I even need to nudge you towards fighting him, or will that come naturally? Either way, I am also curious how much entertainment you will provide before I grow bored, as we see ultimately Druig is manipulating elements and plots to put the two spider beings against each other. Back to reality though, we see where Hallows Eve ran off to, but it seems she just can't catch a break as she moves from one spider being to another, as Kaine, the Scarlet Spider, makes his own appearance now, because before he was following the trail of Ben Reilly, and it actually led him straight to them. And of course, with Hallows Eve being on edge from everything that has happened, she immediately goes to attack the Scarlet Spider, putting on some type of ninja mask, as Kaine goes on to joke saying, "Does Elektra know you're stealing her whole shtick?" And after a short little scuffle, Kaine has enough. Obviously seeing that they're not enemies and don't need to be fighting, he says enough. "I've been looking for Ben ever since I caught wind of his whole Chasm deal, but after fighting that monster he made, Kaine's starting to have second thoughts. But even still, he isn't going to give up on Ben just yet, as he takes off his mask, fully letting his guard down and showing that he's here to help. And after she tries to explain the situation about what has been happening with Ben, his blackouts, his losing control of his actions and self, Kaine starts to kind of lose it a bit, telling her this is exactly why I knew I needed to track Ben down. He can't be trusted to look after himself. If someone is messing with his head, we shouldn't stay confined to this dark tunnels where we have no visibility, nowhere to maneuver, especially since unlike Ben, I don't have," and before he is able to finish his sentence, going on to say how he doesn't have a spider sense, he is immediately blindsided by Ben Reilly, Chasm himself, taking full advantage of Kaine not having a spider sense to get a sneak attack in. And now we finally see these two spider beings, spider clones of the iconic and original Peter Parker, come head to head into blows. But it seems unfortunately for Kaine, Chasm just has too many new tricks up his sleeve, as along with a new identity and costume, he also has new powers, including an offensive spider sense, meaning not only does he have the abilities of a traditional spider sense, warning him of danger, he can also use his spider sense offensively to attack people before they can attack him, even using his new latent energy abilities to create constructs, as he literally makes an axe. He isn't in his full right state of mind and being controlled by the Eternal Druig, he fully intends to make this little scuffle into a death battle, trying to kill Kaine if he could, but still Kaine is trying to take the high road, trying to get through and help Ben, as he goes on to say, "I came here to help you, Ben. You deserve better than one head screw after another." But of course, this is kind of the opposite of what the Eternal Ones as he starts to take manual control, telling Ben Reilly more bloodshed, as he takes advantage of Kaine's moment of vulnerability and slashes him across the back. And now with Chasm having the upper hand in their little battle here, literally pinning him to the ground, and his energy axe inches away from Kaine's head, suddenly Janice, Hallows Eve, decides to jump in to do her part. Using her mask to transform, she tries to grab and restrain Ben before he can do anything he might regret. And as she has him, she finally takes the time to try to speak some sense into him, telling him that yeah, Kaine sucks, but he is not the bad guy here. Someone is in your head. Can't you feel it? Because I know you wouldn't act like this otherwise. I know you wouldn't hurt me. And you know, these clones of Peter Parker, neither were perfect. Ben Reilly and Kaine Parker having their own flaws of their own. But of course, being clones, they still took more from the original, including Peter's iconic and almost unshakable willpower. Willpower so strong, he is able to momentarily shake the control of an Eternal, freeing his mind from Druig's control and hold, even at the very least for now. And with Ben in his right state of mind now, the three of them are finally able to talk about what has even been going on. Ben Reilly saying he can only remember bits and pieces. It was like a dream. But before they can pinpoint what exactly or who exactly, suddenly there's a giant shake and rumble as forces from the underworld itself, a literal army, comes crawling through, breaking through the sewers and subways, ready to unleash havoc across New York, as Mole Man is in the center leading it all. So right now Scarlet Spider and Chasm have to put away their differences and set their sights on the bigger picture as they swing off together. And as they eventually do make it topside, they see just how bad it is. Mass chaos and destruction as a literal army and small kaijus destroy and run through the streets of New York. And of course, with civilians being everywhere, Kaine immediately goes to try and save people, but Ben Reilly's Chasm is having none of that. No, he could care less about these people. Instead, he wants revenge on the person who has been messing with him and his girl. Him even going on to tell Kaine, yeah, have fun with that saving the civilians. Me, on the other hand, I'm going to track down the sick guy who started all of this and give him a piece of my mind. We move over and pick up in Queens, where we see a small army of underground vermin attacking the city at large and the civilians, which of course this army is led by Mole Man, who in turn is being mind controlled by the Eternal Druig. But we see on the scene currently the Spider team, the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly as Chasm, and Ben Reilly's girl known as Hallows Eve, the only ones here trying to stop and protect the citizens. But it seems like the only person here really focused on helping the civilians aspect of it is the Scarlet Spider. As Ben Reilly here, he isn't too much of a good guy and only really pursues what is in his best interest now, as he fully intends just to leave all these people to their fate and possibly die so he can go get revenge on the Eternal Druig for previously messing with his mind and taking control of his life. And Chasm's decision makes it worse for everybody here, as we see the Scarlet Spider can't do it alone. There's just too many foes and they're just too powerful. But still, like I said, Chasm, or Ben Reilly here, the clone of Peter Parker, doesn't really care. And the only person he does care about is Hallows Eve, his partner in crime here, as he stops in the midst of his giant battle to talk to her and try to make up, as previously Druig the Eternal took control and made him fight her. But now that he has somewhat control of his body and clarity of mind, he goes on to tell her that yeah, the Eternal got him good. He got in his head and messed him up, even going as far as to making him hurt her. And he vows not only to never do that again, but also to get revenge on him for it, as they literally kiss and make up as civilians in the background are being trampled and possibly even murdered while these previous heroes are doing what they do. And right after this, in my opinion, we see something really cool, because as another giant enemy enters the battlefield, we see an example of Chasm's special power set. As you see, he doesn't have a normal spider sense, no, he has an offensive spider sense. So unlike Peter Parker, whose spider sense warns him of any danger or upcoming hurt, Chasm's spider sense, which he just calls Chasm sense, literally inflicts damage and pain reflectively instead of warning him of it, which is a pretty cool deviation in my opinion. But this giant foe that has finally arrived on the scene is another giant kaiju, led by Mole Man himself this time. And you know, maybe Chasm could do something because he does have the proportionate powers of a spider, but even he has his limits. He isn't all powerful, he's no Thor or Hulk. So taking down this big beast is a tall order, but a tall order that Hallows Eve seems to have a solution on, as she pulls out some sort of monster mask out of her bag in which she can take the powers and transform into different creatures and entities based on the mask she wears. And as she puts it on, we see it's literally a Godzilla mask, as she herself turns into a giant kaiju. And I mean, like, come on, least obvious plot armor power ever. Like, she just has every mask for every occasion in her bag. Next thing, what, she's just gonna pull out a one above all mask and just become omnipotent. But we do see her stall this giant beast, as Chasm is able to get away looking for Druig for revenge. And even though Chasm is looking for Druig, it seems another spider found its way to him first, as we see Kaine Parker, the Scarlet Spider, has been beaten, captured, and kidnapped and brought to Druig himself. because Druig throughout this entire confrontation and story, he doesn't really have some grand evil master plan of world domination to do with the Spider-Man here. No, he's really just bored with his long lifespan and just wants some entertainment, and for now has latched on to the spider clone drama. As Druig goes on to say and explain himself, yes, your brother Chasm is on the way, but he cannot truly hurt or kill me in any way that really matters, so when I get tired of the situation in this game, I will simply leave. But him revealing why he brought Kaine here, the Scarlet Spider, in the first place, explaining that it would be terribly unfulfilling for Chasm to not fight his other spider clone and essentially brother, with all of the resentment that they have for each other. And with Kaine not having too much of a choice here, he essentially just has to fall in line. But as we see when Chasm finally swings in and arrives, he isn't just going to start guns out and attacking him, he's going to try and talk things over. But unfortunately, Druig is a powerful telepath, meaning in reality what is the Scarlet Spider seeking a peaceful approach, Druig is casting illusions that it is himself, making Ben Reilly see absolute red, because this is the man who he wants his revenge on. So as he lunges for Kaine, he is not holding back, he is trying to attack with all of his might and possibly even kill Druig, who in reality is the Scarlet Spider. And as he is forced to defend himself, he gets his head in the game and starts to fight back. But Chasm here is plenty powerful himself, he doesn't just have the base abilities of a spider person, no, like I've said and you've seen before, he not only has an offensive spider sense, but he can also make pretty cool energy constructs, as he makes an axe getting ready to cleave the Scarlet Spider in half, shouting that he is going to kill him. And in this fight right here, he is doing a pretty good job of showing it, as he is able to land an attack, wounding the Scarlet Spider, making him bleed. As with another lunging attack, he impales his axe into his shoulder, but the Scarlet Spider, being a pretty good and strategic fighter himself, he takes his opportunity to retaliate, webbing Ben Reilly's head and pulling him close, slamming his head onto the same axe. But no, it doesn't hurt or kill him or anything. The energy blade has a pretty different effect on Ben, because as you see, it seems the energy from it overloaded his mind, separating Druig's control from Ben Reilly, finally giving him his autonomy back. And for the first time, we see this attack even being able to hurt Druig, which is no small feat as he is an Eternal himself. And Druig, thinking this is not fun anymore, he has finally had enough of spiders or anything spider related, as while he is in the tunnel system, he encounters a pretty giant spider, and at that he snaps and just has enough, giving up on his little quest for enjoyment with the spiders and just leaving them to their own devices, which is a pretty anticlimactic villain end for the story, but hey, it could be worse. But back on the outside, with Druig finally being out of Ben's mind, he now has full clarity once more, with Kaine going to explain to him the entire situation of Druig being in his mind and the illusions. He not only helps the wounded Kaine up, but even brings him up for a hug, which is no small thing as these two aren't really the best of pals and have a pretty rocky relationship at best. But unfortunately, this kind of wholesome moment is soon interrupted by one of the giant beasts from before, the same one who was able to take the Scarlet Spider in a fight, but now with two spider beings, this might be a pretty easy fight for the duo, if they ever got to fight him that is, as instead of a battle, we see a giant foot come down and just smush him into a smear on the pavement. And of course, that was Hollow's Eve still in her giant kaiju form, which we can assume she won the battle against the other kaiju and is now here, with them of course embracing now that Ben is finally free now. But of course, Ben's now freedom from Druig's control doesn't eliminate the giant invasion of these underground creatures attacking a bunch of citizens roaming the streets of New York, with Kaine saying that they have to get back out there and help save people's lives. But Ben Reilly isn't still a hero per se. Now, he isn't a straight up villain, but right now he isn't going to help save people. He is going to go his own way now that he is free to enjoy himself, which is pretty selfish but on brand for this new anti-hero Chasm, as these two spider clones say their goodbyes and split their own ways, with Kaine even saying, no offense, but for both our sakes, I hope we don't see each other around next time. I'm not sure we could even survive another get together. And later, with the Scarlet Spider helping clean up the city, we then see him go back home to his apartment, as he meets with some of the owners there to find out the vermin, just like roaches, are pretty hard to keep out once they get infested in, meaning Kaine here is now due for a pretty extensive citywide cleanup of these vermin and creatures. And moving over to Ben Reilly and his girl, we see them discussing what are they going to do now that Ben Reilly finally is free and has his mind back. How are they going to proceed forward? And in a bittersweet moment, this story and comic ends with Ben saying whatever they want, insinuating that even though throughout this entire events of this story, he essentially went back to square one, still being the same selfish anti-hero that he was at the beginning. Instead, now he's doing it over his own free will instead of the control of somebody else. So yes, that was the entire Chasm Curse of Kaine storyline. What did you think of it? In my personal opinion, while I did think it was pretty interesting at some parts, and we finally got to see the Scarlet Spider come back, which if you haven't already and you're a fan of Spider-Man or Spider-Man related characters, I highly suggest you go read the Scarlet Spider solo series. It is so good. But with his return, it opens the door for him to come back, and with Ben Reilly, he's kinda back to square one, which for a solo series it's pretty weird and anticlimactic, how almost nothing changed from beginning to end. But of course, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, or subscribe if you're new and want to see more of this type of content. As always, this was the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.